Hello, and welcome to this talk about the Chief Value Officer, a relatively new term with a lot of ambition, the sound of ambition. We're going to talk about creating value, and what kind of value we will be talking about, you will know right after this show with my 4 guests. Werner Schouten, welcome.
Thank you.
You're the first one. You are the director of the Impact Economy Foundation.
That's right.
Impressive title. What kind of impact are you creating?
Well, we want to create an economy in which work, innovation, and entrepreneurship contributes as good as possible towards resolving our societal issues and also contributing to broad prosperity for all. And that requires that we have organizations that put societal value at the heart of what they exist for. And that is what we're contributing to. So we develop the tools for steering on impact. We create the movement of organizations and leaders that embrace this. And we do the norm entrepreneurship. We shift the social norms and also the institutional norms, the regulations, to actually make sure that being an impact enterprise is simply more profitable, it's easier and sexier than business as usual.
And with how many people are you doing this? Because this sounds rather as a big task.
Yeah, so we have a tremendously growing team. We have now like 7 people employed, and we're growing quickly. And as a director being 1.5 years on board, we are very happy with the tremendous actually support and also the seeds of the impact economy that we're seeing out there.
And could you name one example of societal value? What do we...
Well, I think what we look at is societal. Currently, if you look into organizations, right, the main language of value is financial value, through financial
Profit.
accounting. Exactly.
Money.
That I think disciplines every part of a business. And we actually developed, together with the Harvard Business School, a framework for impact accounting, that besides financial value, you also quantify and monetize your contribution to social value, which is like contribution to human rights, social cohesion, human value, the health, the well-being of your employees, the people in your value chain, and also paying a living wage, and finally natural value, so the contribution to biodiversity, to climate, to the environmental pollution. And then through that you can actually much better actually steer on impact and make sure that you integrate that into the heart of your organization. And that's what we see. I think there are very nice examples of Tony Chocolonely, who really does very well on the social side and makes sure that there's no child slavery and there's a living wage paid. And there's so many examples to name.
And you call yourself a constructive rebel. What is that?
Yeah, I think that's at the heart of what we're doing as well. The Impact Economy Foundation is, on the one hand, we connect to what we find to the current system, so to say, so the current focus on financial value, and then we try to be rebellious by adapting that towards enlarging that towards other types of value. So we use this focus on euros and then expand it towards other dimensions of value. So with that, we bring many more people along. Yeah.
And if you, for example, would only be a rebel, how different would that be? I mean, what do you do exactly? In what way?
Well, I think if you are a rebel, then I think you want to make people fundamentally a bit uncomfortable by itself. You want to make them question their paradigms and make them question, okay, why it is what they're doing. But at the same time, the constructive side of that is that we do provide, with our impact accounting framework, with the policies that we develop, we also provide the perspective and the vision on how we can do it differently. And we work with organizations that do it as well. So we don't only sort of make you uncomfortable in the current reality, but also bring you along towards this vision for the impact economy.
Okay, now we're going to talk about the Chief Value Officer. I checked it in my environment. Maybe I'm in the wrong bubble, but nobody knew this term.
No, that's exactly.
Even financial journalists were like, "What are you saying?"
Yeah, well, I think that's
value officer.
That's like the job deformation, right? I think that's very much ingrained as that sort of this. It's almost a radical monopoly. There's this idea of focusing truly on financial value. But if we really truly take sustainability at the heart, then it's fundamentally about redefining what is valuable and valueless in the boardroom. Because now we make decisions mostly on financial value. If the net present value is positive, then probably we should invest this sort of this rule of thumb. But with that, we actually value social value, natural value, the things that we find worthwhile in society, actually at zero. And that is why you need to make the shift from financial to a value focus. And that is what we are very much doing.
Yeah, but you're going fast. You want to make the shift, but first you have to explain what it is.
Yeah.
So what is it, a chief value officer?
Chief value officer is an impact-driven chief financial officer that looks at this broad array of values and not only reports on it, what we've seen a lot in the past decades, but actually truly integrates it in the heart of your organization. So that's not an add-on, but it's into your investment decisions. It's into the heart of your strategy, into your KPIs, into how you do procurement, into the remuneration schemes of your employees, so that it becomes like an impact-driven culture within your organization. And I think on top of that is also that you don't only do that within your own organization, you also work together with people from the sector to actually change the norms, also in terms of regulation, that becomes more profitable and appealing to make the value case instead of only the business case.
And is it literally the idea to change the name, or is it just to put this value thinking on the agenda?
It is to change the name, to change the culture, and to change the instruments that we're using.
You're ready for it, but how ready are we in the Netherlands, you think?
That's a good one. So we are campaigning for this Chief Value Officer of the Year award, and for that,
it's going to be for the first time.
Yes, for the first time. Yes, which we award to the 5 most impact-driven chief financial officers in the Netherlands. And for that, we've gone to CFO fora, to executive dinners, and you see that
you invited yourself.
No, we got invited because people are intrigued.
Okay.
You see, like, they understand, of course, with the COP coming along now, with so many biodiversity summits, that we see that there's this, especially in the Netherlands, there's also this movement around broad prosperity, brede welvaart.
And the COP is the
climate summit.
Yes.
Currently going on in the UAE. So the organizations see that they need to do something with it, but they're searching how. And at those CFO fora, what you do see is that CFOs were actually very humble. If they say, like, what's my role in sustainability? A lot of them said, like, well, storytelling is what we need to do. Well, I was thinking, like, wow, but you have so many incredibly influential instruments at your disposal, like risk return models, your credit risk model, you are talking to the shareholders, you are in charge of the euros and the KPIs. With all those instruments at your disposal, you need to integrate impact into there instead of only telling the story about impact. And I think that is something that we really try to accelerate with the campaign as well.
Did you already find 5 nominees?
We did, yes. It's going to be a big anticlimax. I can't tell anything about it, but on the 15th of December, we will award that by the lead of Jeroen Smit, the head of our jury. We formed the jury with professor in corporate governance, various seasoned executives. And on the 15th of December, during our national conference on broad prosperity, which can also be followed online,
so far
we
your
award
publicity.
the 5 CVOs of the year.
Okay. Only one question. Was it hard to find them?
I think it's...
honestly?
I think it was a search. I think, as you mentioned as well, we had of course, I think there's a very clear sort of pioneering group. And I think it's up to us to make sure that this movement strengthens. And we also noticed that we created also a fear of missing out, that people said, like, ooh, we can't do that this year, we can't nominate this year, but next year we'll be ready.
Okay.
And that is exactly what you want to see as well.
Thank you. I'm going to invite my other guests, Volkert Engelsman, entrepreneur and pioneer in the organic farming sector. He founded the company EOSTA in the 90s. Welcome.
Thank you.
And EOSTA is Europe's largest distributor of organic fruit. Welcome. Ferdinand Vaandrager, the CFO of ABN AMRO. Welcome.
Thank you.
And Sanne Vorstermans van Rumt, managing consultant at Ceder de Boer. Your focus lies, amongst others, on governance, and you did research on the future role of the CFO in Dutch hospitals. Welcome to all of you. I would like to, we've heard already, Werner is already in the future. I would like to take a step back. When was the first time you heard about this term, Chief Value Officer?
Well, for me, it was actually when I started my research to the role of the CFO in my case, hospitals. And when I went to literature, I started to find the word value, value-driven, impact-driven, and it made me curious. So, well, I was really interested in how is that in hospitals in the Netherlands and how do CFOs see their future role. And then, anticlimax again, nobody recognized the term. No.
Not even recognize it.
No.
They didn't know it, but what did they say about it?
Well, they were like, well, first of all, when I call them CFO, they are like, well, but I'm more than only financially focused. So I thought, well, that's an opening for talking about Chief Value Officer. But then they were like, well, yeah, that's also what's in a name. So they recognize that they have something to do to become more impact-driven, but it's very difficult to put a name on it, I guess. I guess that's... maybe it brings too much responsibility if you call yourself Chief Value Officer. And you're responsible.
And Ferdinand, when did you first hear about this?
Yeah, I wrote down what you said, Werner, from humble and storytelling to really integrate it in the finance organization. I only recently started as a CFO as of the 1st of May. But specifically the CV, Chief Value Officer term there is really appealing to me because I really think we are in a transition and you also start steering much more on what impact do you have on the broader stakeholders you have. And
so you immediately...
I mean, I think there are already Chief Value Officers. I was checking with GasUnie, for example. They have a Chief Value Officer in the boards. Yeah. And I think also if you look at the role of finance currently, I mean, most organizations have a purpose, and from the purpose, you set your strategy, and your strategy is to have most impact on the broader stakeholder group.
And the person at the GasUnie literally has it on the card.
Yes, Chief Value Officer. But I think also in the period, what you rightly describes, a catalyst for change now clearly is regulation. Because there you get your data availability, you get your standards, etc. So that also forces the Chief Value Officer to really start dealing with granular or non-financial data. So I think it's a well-chosen. I don't know who started with the term, but I think it's a well-chosen
who started in America? Everything starts in America, I guess.
There's one guy called Mervyn King, who's been very progressive also in changing the corporate governance code in South Africa. He published a book about the Chief Value Officer. I'm not sure whether he was the first to coin the term, but he surely made it globally known.
Okay, and Volker de Engelsman, sorry, yeah,
but apparently not in the financial sector in the Netherlands, or the financial journalist.
Yeah, but also not in America, in South Africa.
In South Africa,
okay.
He started, yeah.
Volker de Engelsman, you are a pioneer in organic farming. Were you maybe already a Chief Value Officer before the name existed?
Good question. I think we all were. Most of the sustainability entrepreneurs, are led by purpose and driven by purpose. So the term Chief Value Officer already circulated for a while. But as Werner said, and also Ferdinand, I think it is relatively new that it is associated with the Chief Financial Officer.
And what do you think about that?
Because in the old economy, you would have a purpose drive, you would have a sustainability drive, all nicely hijacked by separate departments. And bottom line, it was about the P for profit. So your financial instruments were leading. And purpose and sustainability was a nice to have, but nothing existential. Existential was your bottom line. And this profit definition, if you look at the new normal, is clearly shifting from a one dimension to a multi-dimension term, whereby human values, ecological values, social values, health values begin to play a role in the profitability of a company. And there's a compliance side on it, as Ferdinand says. CSRD is one of the compliance frameworks. That
CSRD are the regulations from Europe.
The Sustainability Reporting Directive that requires from companies to report on more than just financial values. But I think the pioneers, particularly in the organic movement, but not only, in the organic food sector were already driven by multiple values.
Okay, so can we say they did it voluntarily, and maybe you do it because Europe wants
it? Translates. It's very good. It translates from voluntarily to mandatory, right? And that's the transition where we're in. But what's also mentioned here, I think, if you look at the annual reports of corporates, have really changed already over the past 2 years. If you look, for example, at ABN AMRO, we have our integrated annual reports, and a big part of the annual report is now focusing on where are your value-creating topics and how do you steer on that. And in all honesty, it's still a little bit separate from the whole financial, more technical part.
And why is really, that?
Yeah, it's still the move. You can do integrated reporting, but at the end of the day, the reporting side is the end of the chain. The integrated reporting comes from integrated thinking and integrated steering. So it's a whole board responsibility. But I think if you look at the moves in what is being reported by CFOs, but also by a whole CFO organization, is much more on non-financial and impact data.
And I understood you announced it at the latest shareholders meeting, the chief value officer.
Yes, very good. When there was an introduction for me new in the role. There was an introduction at the shareholders meeting. I specifically highlighted for me the excitement in stepping in this role is in the transition where the finance organization is in. And it's not just the CFO, because if I look at my team, you have the accounting side really starting to deal with non-financial data. That's really a transformation of your organization. Then you have your reporting, really what disclosures are you using, and also disclosing in being transparent. Then you have your ALM treasury. Where now
ALM?
The ALM treasury, that is if you issue bonds for your funding. These days we're really focusing on issuing green bonds, social bonds. So the underlying collateral is really sustainable assets are behind it. And then you also have your controlling department. How do you, and you mentioned that already, how do you steer your organization? You need to have your key performance indicators, your key risk indicators. And that's what you need to cascade in the whole organization.
And talking about risk, shareholders don't like risk. So how did they react to this announcement?
Well, it's good that you asked, because I'm just back from a trip to Switzerland and seeing investors. And I was 2 weeks ago in the US. In the US, it's a topic, and it's also going in cycles, where it's almost like if you talk too much about it, you're being seen as wokey. So there you have the trend a little bit back again. But here in Europe, I was in Switzerland, I had 4 out of the 7 meetings I had was really also focused on impact. How do you rank in the sustainability indices, your climate plan, what are your ambitions? And it's not so much on the why and the what, but really on the how. How are you going to steer on it? What does stranded assets mean for you in 2030? So all those topics come back. So you need to have, also as a CFO, transition from just looking at the financials of the current quarter. How do we create value?
I think that's really the frontier that we're at right now. I think we've seen a sufficient amount of impact reporting and integrated reporting over the past 3 decades when we're talking about people, planet and profit. But if you really look, I think there was this fascinating research recently from the Transition Pathway Center, which actually studied 1,000 companies in polluting sectors like oil and gas and steel and plastics. And they all set ambitious climate targets, Paris aligned, 1.5 degrees, 2 degrees. But if you look into their capital expenditure agenda, their investment agenda, only 1% of the companies had actually an investment agenda aligned with their climate goals. So that's, I think, connects very well to what you said, Volker, is that we do set those as impact KPIs, but when they bite or conflict with the commercial targets, they often sort of are said goodbye to first as compared to the commercial targets. And I think the key challenge now is to actually create a marriage between these commercial targets and impact targets and integrate those into an integrated
but it's also creates dilemmas, right? And that's the discussion you should have. And it's also for us. I mean, over half of our balance sheet is mortgages, and we're really helping with loans to do your sustainable investments on your home. And we can say we only finance, energy label A or B. But what is then the social impact? Has that the social exclusion for those people who cannot afford to really make the investment in making the energy label more efficient? So it's also dilemmas, right? Because you also have the S and the G. We talk a lot about the E, but the S and the G are sometimes opposing.
I think that's the interesting thing of impact accounting as well. If you really quantify the social value or the human value, it doesn't provide you any solutions. It only provides you more dilemmas. But those are dilemmas that you want to embrace, because that's actually the true value, the true profit that you're making, whether you're creating or destroying value for society.
Yeah, and it's also about future-proofing and de-risking, isn't it? And we seem to be stuck in the past so much that we don't know how to deal with these dilemmas, and we use them as an excuse not to future-proof our business. Whereas we all know that if we don't change a few things quickly, you know, in a failing society or failing climate or bigger weather extremes, water-related, for instance, you know, how can you survive as a company? So eventually, in the past, we would say, we do this for our grandchildren and for future generations, but that boomerang seems to be coming and returning back to us faster and faster. So if you want to not undermine your future profitability, it makes sense to not only cleverly talk about it, but actually act upon it, and include it in your cost and profit.
Talking about acting, Sanne, you see more companies from different sectors. Who has the easiest task? It is difficult, but which sector has the easiest task?
I don't think anyone has an easy task. I think we can make it easy by working together. Not only one sector, not only one company, but together you can solve more problems than you can alone. The problems we are facing, the challenges are way too big to solve on your own.
But do you know a sector where they are further than other companies?
I would not say there is one sector, in my experience, very much ahead. But when you take a look at healthcare, I work a lot in healthcare organizations. People say, well, healthcare organizations, they're making impact because they take care of people who are ill. And I think that's not true, because you see, we focus on taking care of people who are ill, but actually those healthcare organizations can also take a step back and focus on how can we make sure that the inhabitants of the region won't become one of our patients. And that's, well, prevention, but also working together, not only with other healthcare organizations, but very broad in the region, and together taking care of social problems.
Werner, you maybe know of companies, you've been selecting your nominees.
Yeah.
So from which sectors are they?
No, I think we see different pockets of where this impact entrepreneurship is really taking a good hold. On the one hand, of course, impact investors. You see bigger and smaller impact investors doing very well. We have this very interesting impact investor in the Netherlands called the Wire Group. They, for example, work with an impact multiple of money. So they quantify, based on our impact accounting framework, their impact on society, and they say per euro invested, we want to have €2 of societal return. So that's actual social, human, or natural value.
And how do you measure that?
Well, you do that by first calculating, okay, what is your contribution to climate change, to biodiversity, and then increasingly the science is converging on how to value that. What are the societal costs of a ton of carbon or acre of biodiversity destruction? So increasingly we are good at valuing that and quantifying the cost to society of that. So I think that's a very fascinating example, that an investor actually focuses on societal returns on investment. They also don't get their carry if they don't make their societal target. And I think another area is very much the semi-public organizations, like the grid operators and the water organizations, because they already have more of this societal task of providing like a stable electricity system.
And they don't have demanding shareholders.
Well, I wouldn't say that. I mean, like municipalities also would like to see dividends, and provinces as well, because otherwise they have to increase taxes, and I don't think that's an easy sell towards your citizens. So I do think that
whereas they are the citizens the same citizens. I mean, I guess they want to have a greener life as well.
Of course, no, but that's also where you see sort of the challenges, right? It's very difficult to well, it's important that you tell the story in a good way in that regard, and can make sure that maybe sort of taxes go up, but your quality of living also rises. Yeah? So, but back to the for example grid operators, is that they already collaborate in this collaboration called the Verbond van Brede Welvaart, where they jointly harmonize their reporting on impact and also say like, okay, we integrate it in our investment decisions. So every investment decision above 10 million euros, they want to do an impact study, for example. And
that's the bond of great prosperity? Well, how could you translate that?
Yeah. Collaboration on broad prosperity.
Yeah, well-being.
Yeah.
Okay.
And what you see, for example, is that I think one of the grid operators was by law obliged to actually pull a cable to this island called Vlieland through this very nice natural environment, the Waddenzee, because by law they actually had to put it there. Then they did the impact study, and it was like, "Oei, that sort of destroys so much biodiversity if we actually have to open up this sea and then build such an extra cable." And then they actually came up with a whole different solution that financially was maybe a bit less attractive. But if you looked at in the societal cost, it had a much lower societal cost because it had much less sort of biodiversity destruction. And in the end, they actually chose for that solution. So you really see that those impact studies in practice lead to different decisions than in your investments.
But it's also what you say, Werner, is the data and the data availability and the standards there. Because I fully follow you, and if you talk about sectors, as a bank, we're not producing anything, right? So our impact is through our clients and the lending we do.
Yeah.
But there it's so important. We've been experimenting, I think, over the past 5 years with an impact report, really trying to quantify where do we have impact. And that's really what we try to use now for really assessing where is the most materiality we have. And that's also where you're going to focus on. This is where we
materiality. Well, what does that mean?
Where is the biggest impact we have, or negative impact, and what measures are we going to take?
Yeah,
on that?
and what is it? Did you find it?
Well, for us, a very big impact, for example, is mortgages. So it can have a positive and a negative impact, right? So we look through all the different lenses. You were talking about what risks are there. If you look at the next generation, the risk of flooding, the risk of pole rot, etc. There's lots of data in that you can be very clear where are the risks in the future. But it's also looking at your own footprint you have. If you have the ambition to go to 2050 and your intermediate targets for a net zero economy, your 2030 targets, you need to have the right data in order to steer on it. Yeah. And this data element, that's just what I'm saying, you need standards at a certain point. So you can compare each other and really hold each other accountable in achieving those targets.
Yeah. That's changing. We just talked about it.
Yeah, we just talked about it. It is changing.
What is changing?
Well, the quality of data. Because I agree with Ferdinand that it is all about objectifying the quality of data. Otherwise, you get interpretation discussions. You don't want that.
Could you give an example?
Well, then you say my impact on, for instance, soil fertility or water holding capacity of soils or biodiversity is X. And then your neighbor says, well, I disagree with that because I saw something else. And with the help of satellite-generated remote sensing techniques, you can identify in quite an objective way what actually the impact is on soil fertility or water or biodiversity. And that is presently a breakthrough that I just discussed with Ferdinand, that IFRS standards and GAAP standards,
those are all reporting standards. So the financial reporting
have now embraced this quality of these data, which makes it very interesting, at least for the natural capital dimension. Social and governance is still difficult, but for the natural capital dimension, to not only report on a sort of subjective basis, but also on an objective basis, which allows accountants to approve these data and provide assurance, and eventually activate these investments in natural capital on your balance sheet, rather than letting them as a cost factor on your P&L.
Yeah, you're saying it's interesting, this development. What difference does it make for the environment or for society?
A huge difference, because I really like what Ferdinand just said. A bank or a financial institution has no impact, doesn't produce anything on the one side. At the same time, the impact is huge, because we're shifting from a short-term profit-driven shareholder profit to a long-term, inclusive stakeholder profit definition. And in the past, we would have philosophical discussions. What do you believe in? The Anglo-Saxon shareholder profit definition, or do you more believe in the Rhineland model that includes stakeholders? Well, this is now a completely theoretical discussion. It has been bypassed by the CSRD, by legislation, by Extinction Rebellions, who actually blocked the A12. You're simply losing your customer base, your supplier base, and probably your funding base if you don't include two major stakeholders in your profit definition. And the two major stakeholders are people and planet. Yeah. So this triple bottom line is dead, is sort of extinct. Triple bottom line stands for people, planet, profit. If we say that quickly, it makes sense. But the new normal is about profit and profit only, but then including cost and benefits of people and planet related costs and benefits. So for that, we need to generate data that we can rely on to report in an objective way to people and planet.
Yeah, this is about data, and you're talking like people who are already convinced and you know what to do. What if people are watching this and thinking, oh, chief value officer? Okay, could I become one? What is needed to become one, first of all?
I think most important things is to have conversations like this, because you need to be inspired and you need to be motivated to act like a CVO. And I think you have to tell the truth in your organization.
The truth?
Well, I mean, you can't keep telling everyone we can have it all, because we cannot have it all anymore. We have to make choices, and it means we have to focus more on impact than only financial focus, because if we don't do that right now, well, we won't going anywhere. And I think that's very important. And what I believe that we should do, because you talked about we're losing customers or losing a lot of things to keep your organization going, I think very important is new generation of employees.
Yep,
Talent. You have to listen to younger generations who are intrinsically motivated to make impact. And sometimes we call these generations naive or too ambitious, but I think that's not true. I think you should really mobilize those people in your organization to become a CVO. Surround yourself with motivated people who want to make impact and who can actually do something.
And very well said, because I'm looking at Berenice, who's sitting there also listening. She's part of the Future Generation Board, and we have a Future Generation Board who are also included in the Sustainability Committee, but also presenters now and then in the Executive Board. So really make that link with the younger, with the next generation.
Could you explain a little more about that?
Well, it's I think, very important, and a lot of the decision-making is the decisions we're making now. Are they fit for the next generation or not?
So you're asking a separate board with younger people?
You're offering a separate board who are participating in the dialogue we have on important decision-making.
And how many people are in that board?
We are with 7.
7.
Yeah.
Okay. And
can I use the people here in the public, right? So
but what happens if they say ABN AMRO should do this, and you think, okay, no, that's a step too far?
That can be, but at least it's all about what you say as well. It's all about the dialogue. And at the end of the day, because we come back to the CVO, and it's all about you have a purpose, and the purpose translates in your strategy, and it should be integrated, your value creation, in every decision you make. But coming back to CVO, you need to make it measurable. Yeah. Otherwise, what are we talking about? And as a finance department or a chief value officer, you're more a co-pilot in the strategy. So you really make it measurable so you can steer on it. And if you can steer on it, you can hold people accountable. And then you can cascade it in the organization. Otherwise,
I think it's also very important to make it measurable, and that's exactly also what impact accounting is for, so that we use this good system of financial accounting and actually put impact on the P&L by making an integrated profit and loss statement.
P&L.
Profit and loss statement, and then actually let climate
very
and
good. We need to talk in more generic terms
on the profit and loss statement. But I also find it important if people are watching at home and think like, oh, I don't have that data right now. I think it's very good to hold this basis as it's better to be roughly right than precisely wrong. By only focusing on financial value, you're leaving values out. And with back of the envelope calculations, you can already have a guess of like, okay, what kind of risks in terms of human rights or climate I have. And then you can already make educated decisions based on that. And the CSRD will bring a goldmine of data to also get more rigor into this impact data. So it's good to develop, but it shouldn't hold you back to make a first step.
Do you trust on people to be inspired and then do it, or do you think no, we need more to really make this happen and faster than?
Well, I think a change always comes from like these leading pioneers that sort of show how it can be done. And with that, you can, probably not bring everyone along, but you can make surely, I think, first of all, a lot of win-wins. Like sometimes impact simply goes together with financial value. I mean, if I recently spoke to a director of a security company here in the Netherlands, he has an American company, and he had to explain to his American board why he was investing in electric cars, why not just petrol cars. We had to tell them that he wins tenders by the municipality because he's running around with a security company in electric cars. So there are very many examples where they go along. I spoke with a recent developer that develops like neighborhoods. He says like, oh, if I make them with a lot of water and with a lot of nature, it is financially more expensive. But I don't have to pay for marketing anymore because it sells itself. So
but that's a good question, Frederik. I really liked it. I think it's about, as Werner said, and Sanne, mobilizing the full orchestra. Yeah. So if you want to attract customers, if you want to attract community support, societal support, if you want to future-proof your organization, if you want to attract talent, then you better don't wait until you have these exact data that the bank can approve of. I understand that banks have to be rigorous about it, but you shouldn't, as Werner said, shouldn't wait for it. No. But since we are talking about data, I think the question for a CFO, for a chief financial officer, in the past was, yes, okay, I have to accept that we need to invest in talent. But that costs money.
With that face you're making now.
It costs money.
Yeah, okay.
And then for Christ's sake, we also need a sustainability department. That also costs money.
Yeah. We put one person and he or she is the sustainability.
And we tick the box.
Yeah.
And now he or she will have to get used to the reality that sustainability is descending into the DNA of the entire organization. It will affect HR.
Well, that would be my next question. Is it all of a sudden, it's not all of a sudden in a company. I mean, you go to your work and you look at the intranet and you're like, okay, we're now going for
intrinsic motivation we're talking about.
Yeah, but how do you communicate it to your people? Or do you...
Well, it depends on where you are as a leader. And you also always have the first movers, the early adopters, and finally the laggards. And the laggards will say, you know what, I'll wait until the others
first see then believe
invented it. And by the way, these data are not very precise either yet. So, there's enough excuses to do nothing.
Or do you say goodbye to them because you need to move forward?
Well, the laggards would embrace such people. And the first movers who really demonstrate leadership, and as we all know, leadership always comes from a trendsetting minority, also within a bank or within an organization. It is about dreaming, dancing, delivering instead of fake, freeze, and fuck up. Because it is about sharing an ambition, sharing a vision, and then co-creating with a coalition of the willing that includes sustainability, finance, commercial, compliance, etc. And create a little rainbow orchestra where you unite all these colors to strengthen your vision on tomorrow's business case.
Okay, this is a clear comment of idealistic person. I
No,
would
this
say.
this is a
or
realistic person.
Okay, realistic. Seen the fact that we had talking about the Netherlands, we've seen with elections, without going really into politics, but that climate was not really on the agenda, or at least the outcome.
Understatement.
Yes. So that those people who voted are also in the companies. So yes, you say we do it like this and this is the way, la la, and then you look around and you see all those voters like, no, climate hysteria, no.
Yeah, well, the laggards will follow.
Yeah.
It will take time, but I also think you have to do some things to make it attractive for them. For example, reward. How do you reward people? Is that only salary, and do you only give a bonus when people make more money, or are there other things you can reward people by making impact?
For example?
Well, give people more free time to invest in social events or voluntary work, things like that. There are a lot of examples that are not purely financially. If we reward with money, what do we get? Money. If we reward other things, you hope to get other things.
Social impact days.
Social
We have it
impact.
already at the bank, like 5 days for every employee per year to spend on social impact, and you can define it yourself. Right.
And then, sorry,
Yeah,
but one, because that sounds interesting, and then you have to report on it, I guess. You have to tell what you did, or...
No, but you can do it mandatory. These are the criteria. We've chosen for the approach. There are no specific criteria. It should come from the own intrinsic motivation, what you want to do. And clearly you have with your manager a dialogue on it, but it's about the dialogue. But everyone can have their own sort of, how do you fill this in and what is important for you? And where can you make an impact? But it comes back, you said it again, it starts, that's why the CVO is good, it starts tone at the top for your organization. We can talk about purpose and strategy, but CVO, I think, is a perfect example where you show how important it is, right? So
there's one risk.
It's also helpful
Ferdinand.
there.
There's one risk that this sustainability is often associated with ecological side of sustainability, and that we talk about net positive and climate change, etc. But the problem is we are also mind shifting from a, let's say, monoculture, silo thinking, to a holistic thinking, because sustainability is not just ecological, it's also social, and it's also about personal resilience and health. And in our attempts, well-meant attempts to become greener, we have a little bit lost maybe all those, the social minority maybe that is that says, how can I contribute to climate change, mitigating climate change if I'm poor? Mm-hmm. So it's too easy for me to put them away and label them as laggards. It's not what you did. But we need to differentiate. Yes, the laggards, we can, for the time being, it's completely okay to forget them because they will follow. But that doesn't mean that we don't have to put extra emphasis on the social inclusion agenda, which, with carbon taxes, etc., shouldn't backfire on the taxi driver who all of a sudden needs to pay more for his petrol. Yeah. You know, so that is often because it's also more difficult to objectively measure. And we don't have these data.
So how do you do this?
Yeah, well, that's a challenge. I'm just making the point that we shouldn't ignore that.
Forget
I think,
the S.
No, but
exactly.
I think it's a very valid point. But I think really, if we really integrate this within organizations, then it will bring along the people that feel left out right now. I mean, fascinating thing, if you walk around in Utrecht, this city, if you go from Overvecht, this neighborhood, towards the center, over a kilometer, I think the experienced healthy life expectation rises with about 10 years. So people in the first neighborhood live 10 years shorter in a healthy condition. And that is as a result of, because it's appealing to have like a food environment that is full of sugar and full of fat, and that's because they live in polluted areas. And I think if we really sort of focus on this impact-driven entrepreneurship, then they will also in the end benefit, because we then get an impetus and an incentive to actually create create healthier living environments. We get doctors to think with how we can form our neighborhoods so that people are more in lively lifestyles. We have urban developers that make sure that our environments are greener and more blue with water, so that you're more appealed to go sporting, for example. So I think in that regard, it is very much about the value that we're creating is for them, is for the people that are felt left out. Not only in the value chains for which the human rights we're destroying, but also for I think the health, for example, and the inequality that we've created here in the Netherlands.
But do you think that until now, in general, it has been not really communicated in this way so that they know that it's about them?
I would say look at Prinsjesdag, the budget discussions. We talk about buying power. We talk about economic growth. We don't talk about, okay, what's our aim for reducing poverty in the Netherlands? What's our goal? How many people do we want to have in 2025 that live in poverty? How do we want to reduce health inequality? It's not a discussion. We're scratching the surface, but it's surely not in the core. And I think that's coming back to what's then the role of an chief value officer is, I think, really different from how we do it now. I think you should be transitioned first. So as a chief value officer, you start in society and see, like, what is it that society needs? What are the transitions that we need to accelerate? Food transition, health transition, mobility transition. And from there, really try to understand those, right? So that you really try to look at what are the system acupuncture points that we can invest in. So, for example, the food transition, and what are the key obstacles? And then for a bank, for example, you have loans that you can have, you can investments, you can have perhaps some foundation money. So you're like, okay, how can we put that best to use to accelerate the food transition? Because before you know it, you're investing in making cows more efficient, while actually the cow may not have a role in the end of at the end of the food system transition, right?
You mentioned Prinsjesdag, so politics. Who has to take the leading role? Politics or the companies? That's always a question in these kind of
there are no
future
isolated actors. I mean, like politics is strongly influenced by.
No, but what I mean is, you know that also in the past, companies have been saying, but first the government has to do something, and then we will.
But
who are at the table?
That's laggard talk.
Yeah. But I mean, like,
and trendsetters and real leadership is about uniting the orchestra and not pointing at the government. Yes, we do need government, but it's about your own circle of influence, and there's always enough homework there.
Okay. Ferdinand, you're completely convinced of this chief value officer phenomenon?
It's yes.
Yeah.
I am convinced.
No, and I like it.
It's also really in the purpose in stepping in this role, and what you say, like the role for banks. You're talking about the transition sectors, what we've specifically defined. What do we see as the biggest transition trends? We build up expertise, so also outside the Netherlands. We finance the transition in those sectors because we have built up our expertise how to do that and how to measure that.
And since you started this year only,
yes,
I was all of a sudden wondering right now, why didn't you take that moment to change your role? You accepted the CFO role. Why didn't you say then?
Very good point.
I'm the chief value officer.
As from now,
as from now, it's what's the official description, or also how do you use it? It's all about a lot is about communication.
So why didn't you say this?
It's in your former title. It's a good suggestion. I don't have any business cards yet. People don't have it anymore. So but chief value officer.
Yeah, but I'm of course also talking about communicate.
No, it's about the communication.
Because then you will first. This is one of the first discussions and talks about this phenomenon. Then maybe it will start in the society as well. To be honest, when I was asked for this table, I was like, am I going to be in a greenwashing project? And
what do you think?
No, but
well, I'm sorry.
Does it feels like one?
No, it doesn't. But I'm skeptical. But I have to say,
you
it's
haven't
good.
heard about the next project he is launching.
No, I want to know more about it. But I'm talking about the outside world. I'm from the outside world. So the first of all, my friends and colleagues, they didn't know the term. They were like, "What are you?" And then I said, "Yeah, ABN AMRO, la la." They were like, "Yeah, right." So okay, so far now. now I'm having this talk with you. Very interesting.
Yeah.
I'm actually, I'm getting, becoming more positive and believing. But then you have to roll it out to the outside world, and that will take a lot more effort.
It requires co-creation with the public sector, but also
co-creation from a bank with who?
For instance, well, that's the next project he will be launching.
How do you know?
Well, I'll tell you in a minute. This is about a co-creation with NGOs, including Extinction Rebellion, but also Natuur en Milieu, WWF, and ask them, listen, what do you represent people and planet, so social and environmental agencies. What do you require from us as a bank? What we should demand from our companies or initiatives that we finance? Because we have now moved from chief financial officer to chief value officer. So we will be guiding the mission and vision of this bank on the basis of other values than just financial. It will include financial, but it's also environmental and social. And for that, we need the co-creation. So that's a new project that Ferdinand will be launching, right?
But you just became the boardroom whisperer, or
no, I was just guessing. But
is that right?
But I think you're talking about, and definitely, I already agreed, we should definitely have a discussion on that. But if I look at you, the bit more skepticism, it's also in the smaller things, right? So energy saving loans to make your house more sustainable, tikkie machines for statiegeld. It's an initiative from ABN at all the stations where you put your plastic bottles in and then you get, via your tikkie, you get your statiegeld on that. We have, people have noticed, where are the bank branches? We have 25 bank branches left. So how do you ensure for the social exclusion of people who are less digitally adept, etc.? We have over 100 care and budget coaches in the country who go to people's homes to really help them in the transition. So it's more than what we talk a lot about climate. It's also about the social inclusion. And then it's very often in the smaller things you do where you can make a difference, and also what's being felt by everyone working in the organization. What can I do to make an impact? And that's where you need to help them. I think the purpose and the intrinsic motivation is there, but some struggle with the social and the government. So what can I do? And I think you need to help them.
But I think one question, let's say that awkward question that it needs to be asked, and I think is that, do we then also allow ourselves to let financial margins sometimes go, or sort of where, if we can make a profit, do we need to make it then? I mean, like,
you're asking me.
No, but that's a question that a CFO should ask, and also tell to the shareholder, because, for example, fossil fuel bonds are still wildly appealing financially. But are they the ones that actually transform the energy system? So I think, can we have that conversation also with our shareholders and within the organization?
Absolutely.
I find that...
No, you're looking at me. I fully agree with you. You're always looking at the whole picture, but it's also not. It never works to say, like, I'm going to completely exclude certain sectors, right? Because then you're really not changing the goals you set for yourself. At the end, it's all about helping and supporting to make the transition. But at the end of the day, you need to have very concrete agreements with your clients, what they need to deliver, and then you come to the topic at the moment of refinancing or starting a new client with a loan, that you say no. Mm-hmm. And that's very often then the dilemma you have, where you have your committees for to discuss the dilemmas. And it now more and more often that you say, like, also no, because it's the targets we've set are not being reached, etc. And then you exit the client. But even there, exiting a client or exiting a sector is also sensitive. Because also there, that can become that certain sectors or certain parts become unbankable. Mm-hmm. And what do we think of
Ferdinand?
Sorry, it's a broad topic.
We talked about S. Yeah? We haven't talked about governance yet, the G for governance. And suppose we are moving from a chief financial officer to a chief value officer. So that means you include ESG values as well. This G is a tricky one, particularly from the point of view of Werner's question, because we want to be future-proof. We want to provide environmental and social value, but our governance model forces us to actually choose for the more profitable sector, which is the oil and gas industry, to give an example. Much more profitable than anything else. So then we're touching on a governance issue. Maybe the governance should be enriched by stakeholders that represent environmental and social or future generations.
Yes.
And rather than listening to them and say, yes, darling, that sounds wonderful, and can I have coffee now? You would consider eventually to not only have your stakeholder, but also your shareholder a say in your governance. Now, this is sort of quite revolutionary, but since you're a revolutionary person, I thought I'd better ask you.
It's also in your last name, Vaandrager.
Yeah.
It's the one who's
exactly.
leading the troops.
No, I think from a governance perspective, you're fully right. But it's also for organizations, also banks like us, that you ensure that all value creation or negative impact is included in all the committees you have. And it's very important to make that also very explicit. It needs to be part of your risk framework. It needs to be part of your steering. So inherently it becomes part of that. That's happening. But inviting, I think for shareholders, it's very clear. You have your engagement discussions, you have your continuous dialogue with stakeholders and also with shareholders. If they see like, okay, you're not focusing on long-term value creation, you see that resulted into the overall valuation of your company. So I think
it wouldn't be a wonderful idea if that now you are sort of carrying out Extinction Rebellion horizontally out of your shareholders meeting. Well, Rabobank does. And instead of that, if that's the Rabobank attitude, purely from a competitive point of view, it would be wonderful if ABN would say, no, we do not carry them horizontally out of our boardroom. We actually invite them vertically into our boardroom.
Yeah. Well, it's vertically in their boardroom. We invite them virtually, or not virtually, also physically during our annual shareholder meeting.
I mean, vertically.
Yeah. So we invite them, and it's also, if you look there, I think during COVID, where you only had your AGMs digitally, was quite negative, because then it's much less easier to have a dialogue with the different stakeholders. Now again, our last AGM was very well attended, and there you have also the tough dialogues with all your stakeholders. And for me as a board member, that's always the meeting in the year where you really have your accountability on the actions and the results, the broader results you are presenting there. And talking about other stakeholders like the Future Generation Board, what we discussed before, they are part of our sustainability committee. So they're also part of the decision-making, absolutely, because decision-making takes place in the sustainability committee.
Oh, good. Good.
Sanne, hearing all this, and you have been talking to other companies and the hospitals, for example. What is your idea? How long will this take, more or less, to really get there?
Well, I think we already notice change. And we feel it, and I think there's a difference between measurable results and noticeable results. So we start to notice a shift. And I think that's going to get bigger, and hopefully we can measure it. I don't think we should measure how many CVOs we have in 2030, and that's a good indicator for the transition. But I think it never quits, because we keep on facing new challenges, and it's never like we can say, okay, now we're done. Everyone has a chief value officer. We're making only impact. We're done. The systems are so big. I don't think they're too big to change, but it's a really hard thing we have to do. So I think, anticlimax again. It's never complete. It's never perfect. But that should not stop us from getting started, from getting further, from inspiring each other, and make the good examples.
Thank you so much. Beautiful last words for this show for now. Thank you very much. We'll be discussing with the audience, and thank you for watching.